is now read a first time.
The Minister of Culture, Multiculturalism.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request leave to introduce Bill 13, which is the Department of Culture and Multiculturalism Amendment Act 1989, and this is a money bill. Her Honor, the Honorable Lieutenant Governor, having been informed of the contents of this bill, recommends same to the Assembly. Mr. Speaker, this bill will facilitate the operations of the revolving funds at the Northern and Southern Alberta Jubilee Auditoriums, and I would move first reading of this bill.
The Honourable Minister of Culture and Multiculturalism has moved first reading of Bill 13, Department of Culture and Multiculturalism Amendment Act 1989. Those in favour of first reading, please say aye. Opposed, please say no. Carried.
Bill number 13, Department of Culture and Multiculturalism Amendment Act 1989, introduced by the Honourable Mr. Main, is now read a first time. Tabling returns and reports.
Same Minister.
Me again, Mr. Speaker. I would like now to table with the Assembly the 11th Annual Report of the Alberta Library Board for the year ending March 31st, 1989.
Introduction of special guests.
Member for Edmonton Whitemud.
Mr. Speaker, through you and to you, to other members of the Assembly, I would like to introduce a very special guest, an alderman representing the City of Edmonton, Lance White. If we could have Lance White stand up, he's in the members gallery, and we recognize him in our usual warm way.
Edmonton Jasper Place, followed by Edmonton Meadowlark.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to introduce several good-thinking Albertans who are here today to pursue their interests in sustainable economic development. Dr. Bill Fuller, who's with the Friends of the Athabasca, Professor Emeritus of Zoology at the University of Alberta. Bob Cameron of the Peace River Stock Growers Association. Dr. Jim Butler, Professor of Forest Science at the University of Alberta. Brian Toole, Canadian Parks and Wilderness Association. Doris Barnes, Friends of the North, Edmonton chapter. I'd like them to rise and receive the warm welcome of the Assembly. We'll be...
Edmonton Meadowlark, followed by Vegreville.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I too would like to introduce to you and through you to members of the legislature a number of people who are in the gallery today in support of the petition which I and my colleague from Jasper Place presented earlier in the proceedings. They are Louis Schmidt-Roth, Ken Stashko, Jerry Passion, Linda Rubizna, and Harvey Scott. I would ask that they rise and receive the welcome of the Legislative Assembly.
Vegreville.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's often been my pleasure to introduce to you and to members of the Assembly students from the Peter Savard School in Vegreville, but there's one person responsible for much of what goes on at that school that can't be introduced during school time because he's the principal, but he's here today visiting, and I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce Mr. George Sebest and his wife, a hardworking educator from the Holden School, Liz Sebest, and I'd ask that they'd stand in the public gallery and be recognized by the members of the Assembly.
Yes, Minister of Occupational Health and Safety.
Mr. Speaker, it's a special day today for a family from my constituency, and it's special because one of the members of the family has committed himself to become an MLA down the road, and I'd like to introduce four great people, Ron and Judy Kidd, and Murray Kidd, and Darren Kidd, the future MLA of the Whitecourt constituency.
Ministerial statements. Oral question period.
Mr. Speaker, to the Treasurer. Mr. Speaker, on November the 23rd, 1987, the Premier promised this Assembly that the government would compensate investors in the principal companies, to use his words, if the government was found to be negligent, if it harmed investors in any way, and he also said that he would be guided by the Code Report. Mr. Speaker, we now have the Code Report, and the government has decided to stall for more time. Mind you, they've been stalling for over a decade trying to deal with this problem, Mr. Speaker. But it's interesting to see in the emergency debate yesterday that the provincial treasurer was already starting to deny the evidence. And I quote, Mr. Speaker, from yesterday, "Those people who use the negligence characteristic of the government obviously have not read the report, because Mr. Code speaks very clearly to that issue on page 419. My question, Mr. Speaker, to the Treasurer says, on one hand, that they need a week to fully reply to the Code report, but yesterday he was already denying negligence. You can't have it both ways. Which way is it, Mr. Speaker?
Mr. Speaker, there's certainly a lot of wide-ranging thoughts in the introductory comments by the member from Norwood, but what we can say is we have not changed our commitment with respect to the responsibility this government has should fault be there. And secondly, Mr. Speaker, with respect to the comments I made yesterday, with respect to the question of liability and negligence, that I simply directed quoted directly from Mr. Code directly, where he said that his responsibility was not to make any findings with respect to liability or negligence. And that, in fact, is the case, Mr. Speaker.
I mean, he wasn't allowed to.
Mr. Speaker, that's precisely the point. My question is to the Treasurer. Under his mandate, he couldn't say that, but that's precisely what he wanted to say, Mr. Speaker. Is that not the truth?
Right.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I can see already that the member has raised some questions, and it's for that very reason that in considering that very point, together with a variety of other points, that this government appropriately is taking some time to come to a conclusion. And as I have said before, Mr. Speaker, we will take that time, and probably within the next week we'll bring forward a very comprehensive response to Mr. Code's report. Interesting enough, Mr. Speaker, I should say that even the contract holders understand our position, Mr. Speaker, and in fact, in speaking with some of them recently, they have said, yes, take your time, it is a complex report, and we understand the reasoning response which we can expect from this government.
Well, Mr. Speaker, as I said, we've been waiting a long time.
Right.
The Treasurer did say negligence yesterday, and my question to this is to the Treasurer. Is he aware that Black's Law Dictionary, an accepted authority, says that neglect is a synonym for negligent, and also says that recklessness is a much stronger term than mere ordinary recklessness? Isn't he aware then that precisely that Mr. Code was trying to say, if he could, that there was negligence or worse for this government, Mr. Speaker?
Right.
Well, already, Mr. Speaker, I should say that I don't carry Black's dictionary with me, and nor would you expect me, Mr. Speaker, to give you a legal opinion, because I know you'd get that furrowed brow if I was to do that. And so, obviously, Mr. Speaker, I will not provide an answer to that question, appropriately so, because, of course, it would evoke a legal opinion. I'm not about to do that.
Second main question, Leader of the Opposition.
If you did, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah, right.
Mr. Speaker, also to the Treasurer, Mr. Speaker, in June 1986, the Provincial Treasurer assumed responsibility for the administration of the Investment Contracts Act. According to the Code report, Mr. Speaker, the Treasurer was advised by the Superintendent of Insurance on July the 23rd, 1986, that the principal companies would continue to experience operating losses unless there was a massive injection of capital, and that the regulators in British Columbia were refusing to renew the company's registration there unless capital was injected. Now, Mr. Speaker, in light of this serious situation, did the Treasurer inform the Premier?
Mr. Speaker, the testimony is clear that we did, in fact, inform the Premier in early 1987.
In other words, the Treasurer had something that was this important and this serious to this government, and that serious to the people of Alberta, that was going to cause the problems, and he didn't inform the Premier? My question is, why wouldn't he do that?
Well, Mr. Speaker, that is what he has said here in terms of time references, of course, assumes that the day that somebody's appointed to a position, he has immediate and full information. What we did, Mr. Speaker, I provided that information to Mr. Code. At some point, I'll be glad to provide further explanation to it, but we've indicated here We're not going to go through the testimony side again of what Mr. Cote has already taken. That was a long process, took over 2 years with a variety of experts that he used for him to come to that opinion, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, it is appropriate, I think, that we at least have some time to wade through this very heavy report to judge whether or not we are in concurrence with Mr. Cote's statements, and then make a full and complete report to this Assembly and to the people of Alberta, and that's our intention.
Mr. Speaker, what we're dealing with is accountability of this treasurer, Mr. Speaker.
That's right.
And I want to again ask this treasurer. Apparently, on October the 30th, 1986, he decided to bring in outside consultants. Apparently then he didn't even deal with the Premier. And I want to know why he wouldn't, when something was that serious, alert the Premier and the rest of the Cabinet that he was doing that, Mr. Speaker.
Here.
Well, again, Mr. Speaker, we're not the alarmist kind of people you see across the way. We want to make sure we know what we're talking about before we come to a conclusion, and I think that's the reason, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Edmonton Glengarry, Leader of the Liberal Party.
Mr. Speaker, today an official of the Nova Scotia Securities Commission stated that there are certain rules or customs that operate in the financial securities area in Canada, whereby a company that has its home base in a particular province requires that province to take the lead in terms of regulatory control and examination. There are approximately 10,000 investors in Atlantic Canada, about 18,000 in British Columbia. It is my information that the total investment of these two areas would be in the vicinity of $80 to $100 million. It is conceivable, Mr. Speaker, that Alberta, in forsaking these customs or these rules, might find Alberta companies having retaliation put against them. My question is to the Minister of Consumer and Corporate Affairs. Is it correct to assume that the Alberta regulators, insofar as the principal group of companies were concerned, was the lead regulatory agency, and that other regulatory agencies across Canada looked to Alberta for that lead?
Mr. Speaker, my colleague, the provincial treasurer, might wish to supplement with respect to the answer, but clearly the principal group of companies is some 100 and some odd companies who are regulated by various acts of this government and other places. For example, some of them were publicly traded companies where the lead jurisdiction would indeed be the Alberta Securities Commission. Others, however, were exempt in that respect or were not part of the publicly traded companies, so their involvement would be different. The Honourable Leader would have to be more specific before I could comment more precisely in that regard. The Provincial Treasurer may wish to, who's responsible for financial institutions, may wish to augment in that respect.
Well, I see the Provincial Treasurer shaking down the question and the answer. Let's wait. We're waiting a long time, Mr. Provincial Treasurer. Mr. Speaker, let me be more specific with respect to the question that I put. Insofar as AIC and FIC are concerned, is there a right for other provincial regulators to say by custom, by rules, by experience in dealing with each other that Alberta was the lead, that Alberta should have done the regulation, the inquiry, the regulation necessary so that they could rely on it, and they did rely on it? Is that proper?
Mr. Speaker, with respect to those two companies specifically, they come under the jurisdiction of the Investment Contracts Act, which is the responsibility of the Provincial Treasurer.
This is a typical Stonewall, Mr. Speaker. And
they just don't know.
Well, I want to put that question to the Provincial Treasurer, who who thinks this whole matter is a very amusing situation for 67,000 people. But I don't, sir.
Speaker, maybe the member could settle down and repeat the question. We'll give him the answer in time.
No, thank you very much. No, honourable member, your opportunity was there to ask the question. Oh, here we go. Calgary McCall. Calgary McCall. Order, please. Honourable member, you've been called twice. If you don't start, you'll lose your place in the order. Let's go.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm just waiting for a little silence from these clowns next door here. Mr. Speaker, to the Minister of Forestry, reforestation is a very important component of the responsible management of our forests and our very sensitive environment. Continually, discussion is taking place everywhere in the world to improve the environment that we do live in. Discussion continues to take place on the greenhouse effect created by many various chemicals and/or emissions into the environment. Without carbon dioxide breathing living things such as trees and plants, we will not be here to worry about our children's or grandchildren's future. There won't be any. Would the minister indicate to the legislature what is being done to ensure, as per our legislation, that those trees which are being removed commercially are in fact being replaced totally?
Mr. Speaker, a very major part of our reforestation practice is called sustainable development. What that means for every tree you cut, there is another one planted. And the overall concern the honourable member has with the greenhouse effect and with respect to emissions from plants all over this world, that is a concern that we all should recognize. But the new planting of trees and the regeneration of our forest, in fact, helps to stop the greenhouse effect from happening. And as I said once before in this House, would you rather breathe with 120-year-old lungs or 40-year-old lungs?
Mr. Speaker, certainly we'd like to see the trees replanted, but I'm not convinced they're being done properly. The province at times receives a fee from commercial enterprises to reforest on behalf of the many commercial ventures that are there. Would the minister indicate whether or not those monies that are collected are in fact sufficient to replace the trees being removed by these commercial enterprises as per our legislation?
Yes, either, Mr. Speaker, they have to replant themselves or they pay a levy for, and at which time we do it. Yes, it is, but I believe, as I've said before in this assembly, that there has to be, I think, even more pressure put on the forest companies, and I intend to do that, to make sure that the regeneration standards and the opportunity to have a better forest for our generations ahead is enhanced. Our reforestation practices are recognized all across North America. In fact, the world is as the best or among the best for sure. But I think that can even be enhanced even more, and we want to be sure that that takes place.
Mr. Speaker, will the minister have additional resources put in place to ensure increased production is available at either the Pine Ridge Nursery or other places in the province, making sure that sufficient feedstock is available to replace by 100% all trees removed by the commercial enterprises, thus ensuring the immediate replacement of our forests?
Mr. Speaker, the overall concern that I do have is that the Pine Ridge Nursery, there is no possible way it can keep up with the activity, and there, of course, is private sector operators that are also involved in providing seedlings. There will be some enhancement of the Pine Ridge Tree Nursery to see that we can have more seedlings, but also I believe that it's a good investment for the Heritage Fund, so I would encourage all members of this Assembly to take under consideration another investment from the Heritage Fund into a proper seedling facility in this province. And frankly, I'd like to see one in some other area of Alberta as well as at Pine Ridge. Pine Ridge is excellent, but I would like to see not have us all have all our eggs in one basket and have it more distributed in case there was a problem in one place, it wouldn't affect it all.
Edmonton Strathcona, followed by Calgary Buffalo, and now Tabasco Lac-La-Biche.
Mr. Speaker, my question is to the Attorney General. Yesterday, the Attorney General told us that the police have been investigating Mr. Cormier and Principal and the others since the inception, by which I take it he means at least 2 years, Mr. Speaker, and that the mandate of the police is to make a full and open investigation, which is a bit odd right there because usually they work better undercover, but that's by the way, Mr. Speaker. Then they lay the charges, and then presumably they tell the Attorney General. I wonder, Mr. Speaker, if it's not too intrusive, whether the Attorney General might give a ring to Officer Commanding K Division of the Mounted Police and have a chat with him and ask if there's any news.
Mr. Speaker, a valiant attempt at humor, but a failure.
On today's Edmonton Now, Brad Walker's pal Screwy takes a ride on science and technology.
Why don't we take you and put you in the back?
Now that's the stupidest idea you ever had.
Oh, come on. You'll love it. You'll go...
Wendy Coto profiles Bugsy Malone, the greatest show on short legs. And the French Revolution Bicentennial Party comes to Edmonton. So stay tuned for today's edition of Edmonton Now magazine.
Hi, I'm Tim Dancy. With me this time in our studio is Brian Fryer, former Edmonton Eskimo, former Alberta Golden Bear, and now Program Director of Football Alberta. Welcome to the show, Brian.
Thank you.
What is your role with Football Alberta as Program Director? What all does that entail?
Well, basically it's the promotion and fostering the growth of all amateur football in Alberta through various programs and services that we offer.
You're involved in every level of amateur football in the province, right from Adams on up, isn't that true?
Charges could be laid. It was discussed with the Alberta Attorney General. It was found to be in the purview of the federal jurisdiction under the Competition Act, and the charges were laid under that authority.
Okay. Member for Calgary Buffalo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the provincial treasurer, the confidence of Albertans and the whole country in our financial institutions has been shaken, and now we see that even Tory MP Don Blenkiron has stated for national consumption that the Alberta government tried to entice financial institutions to this province by offering easy supervision of those institutions. Mr. Cote advises that in 1975, the Solicitor General, Mr. Harrell, proposed changes to the Investment Contracts Act, but this was stopped without explanation after Donald Cormier wrote to Peter Lougheed, and the need for change was even pointed out by the Minister of Consumer and Corporate Affairs in 1983. This was never proceeded with. I'm wondering whether the minister, since he's now had a chance to get into these matters in some depth, can tell us why some of these needed changes were never enacted, protecting investors when they were so clearly needed over the years.
Mr. Speaker, obviously the outline of the assumptions implicit in what he said are just not true. But secondly, as we said in the House before, we're not going to go back through this whole process of testimony that Mr. Cote has received. That testimony was received and delivered, and you can read the evidence yourself to conclude what, in fact, the minister at the time said.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Investment Contracts Act has been under attack, and his department has been responsible for that act. And I'm wondering why no changes have been announced with respect to that act by his government to date, and indeed why all of the government releases with respect to financial institutions totally ignore. They never mention the Investment Contracts Act, which is still in existence.
Well, now he's getting closer to what would be a legitimate question, Mr. Speaker. Let me say that since the financial institutions in Alberta have suffered as much as they had, going back, I guess, with the two banks, with the trust companies themselves, with the contract companies, certainly, I think the province of Alberta, along with a lot of other provinces, have examined very thoroughly what kind of responses may be necessary, both in terms of how you draft the legislation, how you structure your regulations, what sort of legislation principles should be implicit in this kind of financial legislation. Members noticed today, for example, that we introduced the Credit Union Act. That act, Mr. Speaker, does reflect many of these new fundamental principles which are necessary to ensure that good control, good regulation takes place in these institutions. Moreover, Mr. Speaker, we'll be bringing forward very soon in this session a new trust companies legislation. At the same time, Mr. Speaker, all provinces have cooperated in an information sharing agreement which was signed just recently by the two ministers, the Minister of Consumer and Corporate Affairs and myself, and we're moving in quite a considerable speed to a harmonization package with respect to what sort of principles should be implicit in legislation to ensure the cooperation takes place, to ensure some sort of consistency as between corporations when the regulatory process is put in place. Now, that just doesn't mean that we're doing this ourselves. In fact, this has been at the heart of a federal review, in fact, initiated by Barbara McDougall some time ago. So I think all governments realize the fundamental changes that have taken place in financial institutions, the change in the contracts, the change in the deposit insurance, the changes in the kinds of fundamental instruments that these institutions are using. It has been a revolution, Mr. Speaker, and I think it's important that government regulation, government legislation catches up. Specifically with respect to the Investment Contracts Act, Mr. Speaker, I think most members, most Albertans would agree that it would be difficult to change that act while the code study was on. I can assure the members that we're in the process of reviewing that legislation.
Well, perhaps at least the minister could tell us what the intention of this government is with respect to that act, since it allowed a ludicrous 460-to-1 capital ratio for First Investors Corporation, when other institutions in this province and other provinces were considered to be allowed a ratio of anywhere from 15 to 23-to-1. What are your intentions on that?
I just answered that question, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Athabasca Lac-La-Biche, followed by Edmonton Jasper Place, then Edmonton Gold Bar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Honourable Minister of Environment. I commend this government for a coordinated plan in social planning, economic planning, and environmental management. We have the best in North America, and I'm proud. A plan that has created thousands of jobs, and a plan that will continue creating thousands of jobs, especially for Albertans, northern Albertans that are unemployed. A plan that will reduce the deficit, a plan that will probably eliminate the deficit, a plan the opposition called sweetheart deals. My question to the Honourable Minister is, will he give me assurance to my constituents and this Assembly that the negotiations between the provincial government and the federal government are in the area of environmental assessment processes and terms of reference are progressing as originally planned?
Well, Mr. Speaker, there is no progression because the negotiations have been concluded, and an agreement between the province of Alberta and the government of Canada has been struck relative to an environmental impact assessment process for the Alberta Pacific project in Athabasca. And I assume that this process is going to serve as a model for an ongoing review of the environmental impact assessment process for pulp mill projects down the road. And we're very pleased to participate in this first of its kind model, and we hope that it will serve for full and complete environmental impact assessment processes in the future.
Mr. Speaker, my supplementary question to the Honourable Minister, will this process, the environmental assessment process, are still within the timeline?
Well, it will stay within a timeline to be determined by the review board, and we're anticipating that by the time the deficiency review of the environmental impact assessment documents is completed, perhaps by next week, and that information, along with all the other documents, is communicated to the board, that 4 weeks from that date they will be able to start hearings, and the hearings are expected to take about perhaps 2 weeks, and then their summation should take another 2 weeks. So the whole process from the beginning to the mid of next week should take about 8 weeks total.
My final supplementary question to the Honourable Minister of Forestry, Lands and Wildlife. Will the Minister give assurance to my constituents and to this Assembly that the small sawmill operators who are maybe suffering because of these forest management agreements will be considered before the agreements are signed and discussions are taking place? The specific small operators include St. Jean Lumber, Crawford Lumber, Zielinski, Double R Forest Products.
Mr. Speaker, the answer to that is yes, and also I outlined for the Assembly some days ago, I believe there was outline of 6 guidelines that would be used in dealing with small operators, and the first one was, as I recall, their quotas are protected. The second one is that their timber management units have been set up, and they've been set up province-wide. And thirdly, the sawmill material from the forest management agreements, of course, a lot of that will be made available to those small operators. And then the chips that they've really had no market for will now have a market. And we set up a reserve of up to 5% that for the small operators in the area, and there's been an entire management unit set aside. So the small operators are being advantaged by the forest management agreements, not disadvantaged.
Edmonton Jasper, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to acknowledge that the Minister of the Environment has made some improvements in the environmental impact assessment process. They're slow, they take a lot of time, it's painful, but there are some improvements. Ministers on several occasions outlined the process, which is first an environmental impact study is prepared by the companies. Secondly, there's a deficiency review by the department. Thirdly, hearings by the public or the citizens review panel. After months of refusing an environmental impact assessment on forestry operations, the terms were suddenly changed to include timber harvesting as they may affect Indian reserve lands, and to include cumulative impacts of effluent discharges on the Peace and Athabasca river systems. My question is a simple one. Who is preparing the initial impact statement in respect to forestry operations and the cumulative impacts of effluent on the 2 river systems?
To the Minister of the Environment? And perhaps relative to the forestry aspects, the Minister of Forestry, Lands and Wildlife might want to supplement, but relative to the cumulative impacts, that information will be prepared ostensibly by my department in conjunction with the Environmental Research Council and the expertise that exists there. The data is pretty much available because we know what the standards are relative to the effluent discharges of the pulp mills, and it should be fairly easy for those who have the scientific knowledge and the expertise to bring that information together and to present it in a reasonable fashion to the review panel. Speaker, relative to the forestry aspect, the Honourable Minister may wish to respond.
He doesn't seem to wish to respond. Yes, the supplementary is, I would like the Minister of the Environment, first of all, to ensure that this impact statement will be available to the participants in the hearings in sufficient time so that they can study it prior to the hearings, this document you just referred to.
Well, Mr. Speaker, we will try to make all available information available to those who wish to participate in the process. That's what the process is all about, is to have a full and complete and honest airing of this particular matter.
Right on. What everyone wants to be sure of is that the material is there in time. I'd like to ask the Minister of Forests, in view of the fact that we're now having an environmental impact assessment of forestry operations as it affects Indian Reserve lands, if he can explain why we can't have one that affects all of the lands that are involved in the area, and whether his department will have the studies as well.
Mr. Speaker, it's very easy to explain why it's not involved in this particular process. The resources belong to the provinces. That's spelled out very clearly in the Constitution, whether it be oil and gas or whether it be forestry. Of course, the federal government has some jurisdiction with respect to that, if it's on federal lands or if it is on Indian reserves. So, of course, that part would be included. I don't think I have to rehash for the Assembly the statement I've made before about there's been 2 environmental impact studies done on forestry operations in Alberta. One was done in 1973 by C.D. Schultz, of which it said it found the logging practices environmentally acceptable, with a couple of exceptions which we have dealt with. There was also a full ECA hearings held in 1978 and 1979 on forestry operations with respect to the environment. Some 90% of the recommendations that were made have been implemented. Some of them were outside of our mandate and couldn't be. Others are being still looked at to see if there's a way that they can be made compatible. We care very much, Mr. Speaker, about the environmental concerns of logging operations and the health concerns for Albertans and for others. And if we were to hold an environmental impact assessment on forestry operations, we'd have to hold one a year because it changes in that way. There is a lot of opportunity for public input, and we will modify and change and improve in any way we can forestry operations, taking into account the concerns for the environment.
Edmonton Gold Bar, followed by Red Deer North, and then Edmonton Kingsway.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it's evident that the deferrals and the posturing of the government regarding the code report are patronizing to Albertans. The people of the province are sick and tired of evasions and dissembling, including those of the provincial treasurer. It's remarkable, Mr. Speaker, but the treasurer is becoming known as a master of the new science of fuzzification, whether we're talking about his financial statements or his baffle gab. There are a number of factual matters, however, Mr. Speaker, where Albertans deserve clear answers, and I believe the treasurer should give them to us. The first question I have, Mr. Speaker, is the provincial treasurer now prepared to disclose how much Albertans paid to the lawyers for the Cormie family? I assume that information has been discovered by now.
Questions are clear and Marxist.
Thanks for the compliment, honourable member. Let me say, Mr. Speaker, that question was asked already. We have already indicated that at some point we'll provide that information.
Stall again.
Clear answers, and now, Mr. Speaker, perhaps the treasurer can take a run at this one. Does the Premier's promise to reimburse investors if the government is found negligent include the 4% interest guarantee as well as the principal? They need an answer.
Again, Mr. Speaker, the member would have to be more specific as to what she's talking about.
Oh, God. Outrageous.
Mr. Speaker, it's very clear what I'm talking about. Everyone. The next question, Mr. Speaker, is to the provincial treasurer. Where is the treasurer going to get the money to pay off the contract holders? Now, that's a simple one. That should be an easy one to answer.
Well, Mr. Speaker, here you see the example of a member who really doesn't understand the process at all. She stands up and makes the kinds of false accusations that are typical, and unfortunately now becoming more typical of her. And she doesn't have to be insulting or caustic or petulant or truculent to get the point across. What she has done is just that, Mr. Speaker. Let me say that I'd rather be known for doing something for this province than be known for doing nothing as she is, Mr. Speaker. What we are doing now, Mr. Speaker, is providing the very best opportunity to review this code report, to put in place one of the finest responses that you will see, but we're going to take our time to do just that, Mr. Speaker, and nothing is going to change us from that course of action.
Red Deer North. North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, as we speak, and my question is to the Minister of Advanced Education, today as we speak, some 8,000 students have registered for approximately 4,000 positions at Red Deer College this September. A significant portion of those registrants are in university transfer programs and make up a large number of students who would prefer to be staying in Central Alberta to finish off their degrees. Can the Minister indicate to us today where in his list of priorities is the request from Red Deer College, from Red Deer City MLAs, from Central Alberta MLAs, from Central Alberta Chambers of Commerce, and from the citizens of Central Alberta that Red Deer College would become a degree-granting institution?
Mr. Speaker, obviously obtaining a university degree is very important to not only many students but parents and taxpayers as well. I said earlier, I believe on June 12, Mr. Speaker, that I was visiting each of the 29 institutions in Alberta, that being one of the items that I was most interested in. And at the conclusion of my visits, I would come to probably a conclusion as to whether or not public colleges in Alberta should be granting university degrees.
Supplementary to the provincial treasurer, who enjoys the benefits of a degree-granting institution in his own city, can the provincial treasurer indicate to us, has he given any indication to the Minister of Advanced Education or to Red Deer College or to anyone for that matter that there are any fiscal challenges which would prohibit Red Deer's request from becoming a reality?
Quite a few. Mr. Speaker, of course, I do not want to get into the domain or jurisdiction of the Minister of Advanced Education, talking about whether or not that's a meritorious objective. I assume that at some point we'll have that debate. I should say that my brief experience has been that these institutions are very much up to speed. And in fact, in comparisons of our advanced educational systems at the college level with universities and other provinces, our colleges are in fact extremely competitive, if not much more effectively facilitated than those universities in other parts of Canada, simply showing our commitment to funding, Mr. Speaker, to the advanced educational system in this province. Now, Mr. Speaker, I know that if the Minister of Advanced Education wants to bring forward a recommendation which would move towards some sort of degree-granting status for colleges, as we have done with the private colleges already, that he would do it on a gradual basis, taking full recognition of the demands on the Treasury, and I know on that basis alone we'd have a reasonable approach on the funding side, Mr. Speaker. It wouldn't be immediate, it'd be gradual and well thought through.
Supplementary to the Minister of Advanced Education, Mr. Speaker, can the Minister tell us, in light of the Treasurer's comments on effectiveness, which Red Deer College certainly is, in fiscal management, has the Minister received any opposition to this request from existing degree-granting institutions in the province?
Well, Mr. Speaker, we do have a Universities Coordinating Council. One of their tasks is to review that very subject as to who should or should not grant degrees. I would point out, Mr. Speaker, one has to consider not only the institution but the student. And a fundamental question would be, if colleges grant degrees, do you change the natural success of that college as to being a partial university? And secondly, is it in the best interest of a graduate from a community college going on to McGill University that is recognized having had a degree from Red Deer College? Is that in the best interest? There's some of the questions that go into the makeup. Finally, I have a great deal of reassurance from the provincial treasurer that if and when my department seeks that, it's going to be favorably received.
I'm sure both members from Lethbridge can talk to each other on their Airbus back home to Lethbridge about this. Edmonton Kingsway.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Code said of Mr. Salah, the Superintendent of Insurance under Connie Osterman, that he was not allowed by the Minister to enforce the Investments Contract Act. Code did, however, blame Salah and in fact called him dishonest for making a wording change to the so-called guarantee on the back of the investment contracts. Does the Treasurer admit that changing the words of the guarantee from "the company holds assets equal to 100% of its liabilities" to "the Investment Contract Act requires the company to hold assets equal to its liabilities," does he agree that that change makes the Alberta government complicit in the defrauding of innocent Albertans?
Again, Mr. Speaker, I think you have taken the words out of everyone's mouth.
Well, are you suggesting that the people don't have the right to expect the government to enforce the regulations?
So, honourable member, before the provincial treasurer responds to that question, the first one was clearly out of order under 408(1)(c) and Beauchesne, and that's the member's responsibility. Provincial treasurer, with respect to the second question, is asked. Thank you. You're out of order. Provincial treasurer, if you wish to respond to the second question.
Mr. Speaker, let me say that, again, we will be in the process of reviewing our responses. Obviously, we have to factor in everything Mr. Code said about the regulatory failure. I do hesitate, however, to proceed further with respect to this particular line of questioning. I seek the advice of my colleague, the Attorney General, but in fact, it seems to me that the kinds of false statements that have been referred to by the questioner may well be the subject of the federal jurisdiction's criminal charges against the Cormy Group.
Mr. Speaker, the changing of the words on that guarantee was one of the strongest pieces of evidence that this government was negligent and that it puts the interest of its friends and its own image ahead of that of ordinary Albertans. In coming to its decision about negligence, the compensation for negligence, will this government consider the weight of that argument in a court of law if it comes to that?
Mr. Speaker, a three-part question. First of all, as I've said previously, there's one thing I can comment with respect to the Code report, and that is the early assumptions before the inquiry was put in place that there was some sort of direct relationship between the government and the Cormy family. Although that was rumored and speculated and at the heart of some of the criticism and certainly the opposition's viewpoints, make it very clear, Mr. Speaker, make it very clear that Code did not find any connection between the principals of the principal group, the owners of the principal group, and the government. And that statement, Mr. Speaker, is in fact out of order.
Westlock Sturgeon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question today is of the Minister of Economic Development. Mr. Speaker, the ongoing saga of the provincial government's involvement in the financial affairs of the Pocklington and Gaynor Empire has created a great deal of cynicism in the public and a great deal of concern, particularly amongst the pork producers, Mr. Speaker. And in particular, as the Minister well knows, the agreement between Gaynors and the Pork Board for the purchase of hogs has expired. Now, my information, Mr. Speaker, is that the government has asked the Pork Board to help subsidize the Gaynors and before they can sign an ongoing contract. Is that indeed the case? Is the government asking the pork producers to subsidize Gaynors in the new contract?
Mr. Speaker, that question would be more appropriately put to the Minister of Agriculture, who's so closely involved with the affairs of our pork producers in the province of Alberta. I must indicate to the honourable member, though, that I would find it highly unlikely that at any time would we ask the producers of this province to subsidize anybody.
Well, Mr. Speaker, may I switch just a bit if he's going to refer to the Minister of Agriculture, but this is also within pork production and well with his ambit. Is he aware that the appeal against the tariff by Americans on our processed pork has been turned down? And one of the main reasons it's been turned down is due to the crow offset benefit paid by the provincial government of Alberta. Is he aware of that?
Take it as notice for the meeting.
Mr. Speaker,
The honourable member, I'm sure, is aware that there is a further step as it relates to the appeal process as it relates to the countervailable action that is against Canada and our pork producers. We're very closely involved with that. In fact, in my former responsibilities, we had the Department of Agriculture involve themselves in offering support to the pork producers of the province of Alberta, because I think it's highly unfair for the U.S. to suggest that we have subsidies in place in this province that are not applicable to the U.S. producers themselves. And because of that, we have received the assurances from the federal government, the Deputy Prime Minister, and the Minister of Trade at the federal level, that they are going to involve themselves in these discussions so that they can protect the producers of this province and of this country.
Time for question period has expired. May we have unanimous consent to complete this series of questions? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Final supplementary, Westlock Sturgeon.
Speaker, for the information of the minister, I would like to table the U.S. ruling here, but it makes quite clear, and whether or not it's unjust or not, it makes it quite clear that the Americans have already said that the pork cannot come in. So what is this minister and what is this government going to do with those yapping ones alongside with you? I don't know if they're any help to you or not, but what is this government going to do?
Thank you, honourable member. We got that far. What's this government going to do? Thank you. Sit down. Park your pork, please. Thank you, honourable minister.
Mr. Speaker, as is the tradition in this Legislative Assembly, the honourable member from Westlock Sturgeon is usually incorrect, as he is incorrect this time, whereby the U.S. have not stopped the entry of our pork into the U.S. markets. What they have done is imposed a temporary tax measure upon the pork that is going into the U.S. And I stress the word temporary because there are still hearings taking place, and in the event that they find that there is not subsidies of a substantial nature within the province, that will be returned to the producers of this province. And we're working closely with the producers of this province to offer the assurance to our U.S. counterparts that that is not taking place.
Thank you. There's a request under Standing Order 30, Westlock Sturgeon.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I hope I have a little...
At a point of order.
I think, I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker, not trying to tell you how to do your business, but does the point of order come before the...
Point of order.
I thought there was one. It was right beside me, that's why I heard it.
There is one. What? The answer to the question is yes. When the chair is informed that there is one, the chair obviously has been informed there is one. Calgary Buffalo.
So I did raise the point of order very promptly, Mr. Speaker, shortly after, just after you ruled the final question of our... hold on. What was that?
He has an unbiased witness.
It relates to the third question asked by the leader of the Liberal Party. The question asked by the member from Glengarry was of the provincial treasurer, and he indicated that he had asked the same question that he asked of the previous questioner. The treasurer stood up, Mr. Speaker, and asked, citation is 13, section 13 of Beauchesne. The Speaker's rulings constitute precedents. And the treasurer asked, that's right, because I'm going on precedent, Mr. Speaker. The treasurer asked the member of Glengarry to repeat the question. Now, maybe the treasurer didn't hear the question. Maybe he forgot the question. Maybe he wasn't paying attention. But the question that was asked was clear. And it's the custom of this House, Mr. Speaker, the clear custom, to allow the question to be repeated when the questioner says, I haven't heard the question, I don't know the question, please repeat the question. It's my clear recollection of a number of times that is the custom of this House as a courtesy to the minister. So I've stated previously, Mr. Speaker, and I state again that we ask for even-handed enforcement of the rules. I raised this same principle 10 days ago. It's a principle I think is fundamentally important, and it's so obvious that it shouldn't need repeating.
Well, Thank you, honourable member. Number one, you did not raise exactly the same point 10 days ago, and you should check the record as well. At that occasion, the question was taken away from the member for a different reason. And what indeed did occur was the matter that the member for Edmonton Glengarry did ask the original question, and then on the second supplementary, the treasurer did not give supplementary information. And then on the third supplementary, the member for Edmonton Glengarry said the same question to the provincial treasurer. The chair could only assume that the provincial treasurer had indeed been listening to what the line of questioning was on terms of the whole issue. Thank you. We'll do this without being interrupted, honourable member from Glengarry. And at that time, through a check answered record, but the chair did not hear the provincial treasurer say he wanted the question repeated. But he chose not to respond. And at that stage, while he made some comment about having the question asked again, nevertheless, it was the responsibility of the treasurer to be listening to what was going on. If he chose not to answer, then that's his own decision in that regard. The matter of, it's been coming up time and time again about demanding answers or to questions or saying that the answers aren't good enough. I would refer honourable members to replies to oral questions, Beauchesne 416, 1 and 2. And the final thing in this regard, I understand the complaint of the honourable member in terms of trying to get more information, but that's part of the ebb and flow of question period. But finally, it is a curious performance at this stage of the game, or a curious occurrence at this stage of this legislature to find that the member for Calgary-Buffalo is standing up to make representation on behalf of another good lawyer in the House, the member for Edmonton Glengarry. Standing Order 30, the matter of Westlock Sturgeon.
Mr. Speaker, I hesitate to stand up between two good lawyers, but I thought I'd bring out the fact that standing order, and behind another one, standing order number 30, that I would ask the Speaker to allow a special debate to go ahead on the code report as it did yesterday, Mr. Speaker, and without taking too much of your time and the House's time, the arguments for the necessity and expediency, I think, today are exactly the same as they were yesterday. But in addition to the fact that the emergency still exists, if it existed yesterday, and they're again trading on your precedents, there is the additional factor that many of the MLAs, both sides of the House, were not able to participate in the debate yesterday, in spite of the dispatch and the well-run nature of the debate, Mr. Speaker. There are still, just because of the nature of the time restriction, many that couldn't participate. And the last argument, Mr. Speaker, is, as you will recall yesterday, many people mentioned that they couldn't get copies of the report. They hadn't been able to read the report. That's given an extra 24 hours for more copies to have circulated, more people to have read. So I would ask your indulgence, Mr. Speaker, or your ruling that it is indeed a matter to go ahead.
Thank you, honourable member for Westlock Sturgeon, for giving the appropriate notice to the office of the Speaker in sufficient time. However, under Standing Order 30, the chair has no recourse but to bring into play Standing Order 30, subsection 7, subsection D, a motion under this standing order is subject to the following conditions. The motion must not revive discussion on a matter which has been discussed in the same session pursuant to the provisions of this standing order.